Excited. Hey, welcome to LinkedIn Live. This is like pirate radio because the producers have taken over. Normally Sean is here, Sean Walchef, our leader. He is now on the mountain enjoying some family time. So what we have decided to do is take the reins. I'm here with Gavin and Mike from Cali BBQ Media. We're excited to come to you live, and we're going to have our usual show. We're going to chit chat a little bit at the start here about producing. The concept of getting things made is really important these days. You need to make content, you need to make videos, you need to get stuff. And it takes a lot of work to actually get these things made. You can have an idea, but it takes a team, it takes vision. And actually, ultimately, at the end of the day, someone has to work. So my name is Stover. I've been a producer with Cali BBQ Media since it started. Before that, it was a barbecue restaurant that had slowly already been turning into a media company, whether we were called it that or not, because of Sean and his work telling the story of the barbecue restaurant on social media, which was new at the time when he opened. And he told a lot of people online over and over again, and one of them was me, that the power to tell your own story is now in your hands. And it never was that way before. Back in the day, and I'm saying just 10 years ago, you had to really rely on other people to tell your story. But now we have the tools in our pocket to do that. We can build our own brand, build our own businesses, and we can build community like we have here. So I'm really excited to get to the roundtable and hear how all of you out there do your own producing, how you make content. So I'll pass it off to Mike, and then he'll give a little intro.
Thank you, Stover. Yeah, appreciate it. Excited to dive into this topic. And Mike Biseglia, producer with Cali BBQ Media. I've been doing production type work for like almost 20 years now, starting in radio, podcasting, and now excited with the work I've been doing the last 3 or 4 months with Cali BBQ. And this topic to me excites me just because I'm a producer. I've been doing it for a while. And I really think it's interesting how the landscape of the industry has evolved and changed, and what producer even means has changed. And there's so much content that can be created. And to what you had said before, Stover, like, yeah, you have an idea, you've got this dream, you've got thoughts, but production and how you do it, even if you don't think of yourself as a producer, the steps that you need to take to make the content, put it on the internet, put it out there in the world, you are producing. You might not know it or not, but you are. I'm fired up to talk about it. And with that, I'll hand it over to Gavin.
Okay, there we go. That was bad producing right there. Just trying to unmute my mic. I'm
good.
Gavin. I'm a, I guess, 12-year media production veteran. I work with our external clients here at Cali BBQ, helping to amplify their message and let the world know about what they offer. I started in radio 12 years ago, and like Mike was saying, the word production has changed so much over that time to what it means now. From hosts that didn't want to touch the buttons to now the hosts and creators are doing everything themselves. So really excited about this discussion to talk about the media landscape, how it's changed, and what it means to be a producer. And I believe there's two different arms to that, and I'm excited to get into it.
Do you know what it means to be a producer? Sometimes your wife gets a flat tire and is stranded on her way to work. So I'm going to hop off and take care of that. Go on my phone and participate that way. So I'm glad we have multiple producers so you guys can carry the load here while I go take care of it.
Well, best of luck to your
This
wife.
is how we do live content. I'll see you guys on the road.
Yeah,
a major part of production is always dealing with, especially in radio and live production, you got to be able to pivot. So there's an example of that. When I was talking about the two arms of production, I think of it as creative and technical production.
Yeah.
And a lot of times in media industries, you could maybe fill only one of those boxes. You're a technical director, you're a creative producer. But the best thing in production is, when you work in it long enough, is to develop the skills to be able to do both.
Yes.
Me and you both, Mike, worked in radio and sports radio. We even worked for the same host at one point.
Yeah, it's crazy.
For two different networks over a span of years. But from radio and podcasting, a major issue, when you're starting creatively developing a show, is what are you going to talk about? Who is it for? Why does it matter? Those are all questions you need to be able to answer, not just creating the overall product of the podcast or show, but in each daily show or weekly show. And then there's the technical direction of the show. How are you going to produce it? Is it going to be remote on Riverside? Is it going to be streamed on StreamYard? Is it going to be filmed in a studio? Is it going to be broadcast over the radio? Anything like that. So, and developing those skills takes time. And I think me and you both operate in the mindset of might as well learn as many skills as you can to
Yeah.
have those in your tool belt. So I've seen over the years that the best producers are just the ones that are able to be a sponge of knowledge around the people you're with, and being able to learn
Mm-hmm.
as many techniques, but also programs and platforms and areas of production, because it's always changing. And as we talked about, this industry has changed so much over the years, and what it means to be a producer has changed, and the way that we distribute content has changed. And I think the biggest, most important thing right now as a producer is being just active in learning, and even moving from this show right now from LinkedIn calls to
Mm-hmm.
Riverside. I mean, you always have to be ready to pivot. But anyway, I could go on forever, so I'll let you take it from here.
Yeah, no, I think that's an excellent point. And I think the root of the word is produce. Like, the end of the day, what you want to do is you want to produce. So you want to get content out. You want to get whatever it is you're creating, if it's content, if it's a house, if you're whatever you might be building, you want to produce something. You want to make it get to the next stage. And to me, I always thought like the job of the producer is produce it, make it, have it happen, and then think of all the little steps along the way. So whatever it is that you're ultimately building towards, it's all these little paper cuts that build and build and build, because you need to make whatever it is to happen. And it's a lot of little things that happen behind the scenes. I always say this, like, a lot of the times, and it's true in some ways. And in radio, it's kind of funny because, like, I don't know about you, Gavin, but there were so many times as me as a radio producer when, like, you would get shit on, but it was doing it like in a fun way where it was like you're part of the programming. But I always, in some facet, but also as a producer, like, you do your best work when nobody knows you even exist. And I
Yep.
hate to say it like that, but it's like, if things are going well and everything's flowing and the host is in a groove, you did your job as a producer, where no one even knows you're here. It's all of a sudden, it's when something goes wrong. Where's the producer, right? Like, that to me
Yeah.
sometimes signifies when the producer's noticed. But in today's 2025, man, I taught podcasting at a local college by me. And I always said, like, if you're going to produce something, as the job of producer, you're the host of it. You're the audio engineer. You're the graphic designer. You are the person that is editing. You are the person that is coming up with the copy. You're coming up with the pre-production schedule. Like, the job of a producer is to get everything done. And it's to put your host in the best possible position, or put whatever you're working towards in the best possible position to succeed. And that's always how I've envisioned it and had that mindset. And then, to your point too, Gavin, just adapting, right? Like, when things change, you adapt with them, you move with them. We went from LinkedIn, now we're here on Riverside and we're recording this way. You just kind of got to flow with it.
Yeah. And with AI now, who knows what production is going to mean in 10 years from now, or, even 5. So you always have, yeah.
That's a huge one too, Gavin, right? Like, I think as producers, at first there was some skepticism, like, oh, I don't want to use AI. But then it's like, well, you know what? You can actually be more efficient and better at your job if you know how to use it correctly,
exactly,
in the right manner. It can be a tool that is great for you.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, an example of that, when I was at Donut Media, we had a tool that I would use called Autopod, and it's a plugin for Premiere. And what it'll do is it'll take an hour-long multicam podcast with 4 different shots, and it'll analyze who's talking at what time and select the best camera angle, and it'll cut the whole podcast in a matter of minutes. Now, you still have to do a ton of other production in terms of making it sound good and cutting out different things like that, implementing effects, stuff like that. But taking out a giant chunk of switching camera angles is massive. So yeah, pivoting on that, I think. We were talking about just what it means to be a producer. My old adage used to be that a producer's job is to make the host sound as good as possible. And that is still the job, especially when you're working with the talent. And there's a lot that goes into that, including making sure you have the equipment to give them that ability, to how it looks in post, and all those things. And sometimes, editing things to make sure that nothing gets misconstrued. That's a major part of production. Is you have to be the protector at the gates of what's going out to the world, especially in a podcast form, because it's not live. And but that's changed, especially in the creator economy now. Like you said, the
Hmm.
host is doing, I used to work with hosts that didn't want to touch the buttons. That was their whole thing. And now a lot of those hosts are doing it themselves, and they you have to learn. And there's amazing ways to learn now, and be able to stay on top of what is out there, and how you can use it to be able to do it yourself. Which, as we start bringing people on, I think we'll hear a lot about people that are producing from themselves, even though it's not their own industry.
Yeah, and I think and as we bring people on, think about it for the conceptualized idea of production doesn't have to be just I'm making a radio show, I'm making a podcast, I'm making a video. It's whatever you are producing, whatever you are making, that is your production, and you are the producer
Mhm.
of that said item or entertainment that you're making. And before we bring on the whole stage, Gavin, I did want to talk about just, and if Stover here, we probably get a little more into it to give some more of the backstory with some of the Cali BBQ stuff. But,
Mhm.
at least for us, it's been an awesome experience, in the first couple months here together, creating new content. And for me, I've really loved, like, I'm a producer, I know how to produce, but I had to learn a lot about more of some of restaurant industry. And for me, it's like taking those producer skill sets and using it with some of this new knowledge and new information. And I've loved, and it's been really interesting learning new information on the restaurant side and using my producer skills to kind of blend the two. It's like I'm telling my wife now all
Mhm.
these things, like like I know what I'm talking about. Has been kind of cool.
Yeah.
Has been cool for me.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think the explosion of podcasts in the B2B space is
Hmm.
massive. And getting to work with Cali BBQ and our amazing, like for me, I work with our external clients, and working with some, I work with a lawyer, I work with restaurant tech companies, and they all have so much to offer. And, our job is, as people that are going to be able to have expertise in an area that they don't, and being able to get their message out there. But it's really exciting, and it's been so much fun because it's so different. It's so different than working in a sports talk radio show, or
Hmm.
a podcast that is a narrative driven podcast, stuff like that. So the other aspect of production we haven't touched on as much is about, once the show is produced, how do you grow that, and
Sure.
how do you, analyze the metrics, and look at who your audience is, who's being underserved, how can you grow it. And those are all areas that anyone in business has to work with, of letting data inform your decisions. And that's a major area of production. It's only grown as data has been so much more available now. We're able to know so much more about who we're reaching.
Hmm.
And I mean, even with YouTube, their analytics tool is just phenomenal with letting me know the exact minute that people are dropping off. So aspects like that, like those areas are so important to production nowadays. And I think you need to be successful in this industry, you really need to know who you're talking to, who you're not reaching, and how to inform those decisions about the content you're making so that you can grow it as big as you can. And there's a lot that goes into that, including what time you're doing it, when you want to build yourself into people's routine, and then obviously social media. That's a major
Hmm.
aspect as well, and
Oh
short
yeah.
form content. And so there's so many different areas to go into here. But the overall thing I would say is just that this industry is always changing, and you got to be ready to pivot once it changes again. So,
And for people, thank you, Gavin. I agree with everything, man. And for people that are listening or watching on the live stream, I just dropped in the Rising Tides LinkedIn message or in the LinkedIn group chat, how you can get involved and join on stage. And I know we see Ian, Matt, Elizabeth, Hildy. I'm going to bring you up in a second, but I want to let the group know. Um, just put in the link there. It's betheshow.media/rising tides. And if you go in there, there is a join the conversation, and that is how you can get up onto the stage and join this conversation. Change the format there a little bit, so I wanted everybody to know that as I'm producing at the same time of typing in messages into the Rising Tides board. I want people to know that so they can get on there. But Gavin, I guess we'll let the group in and bear with us.
Yeah,
as
and
we-
and
as
let
we- as
us
we
know
do
what
this.
you guys want to talk
Yes.
about too. I mean,
Yes.
in terms of in the world of production, Mike did such a good job talking about how everyone is a producer in their own realm. And I think a lot of the stuff we'll talk about, you can apply to your own industry.
Exactly. All right. So we're going to let everybody in. We'll do it right now as we get the Brady Bunch squares popping.
Yeah.
I do like saying that. I have a fun
yeah.
time with that. So Ian, Hildy, Elizabeth, Matt, welcome to the conversation. We're talking about production, about producers. And we started this. We stood over here. You had to bounce for a second, but I think part of being a producer is just rolling with it. Things change. Gavin, you said something a few months ago, and you said there's no podcast emergencies, so you just kind of move with the flow, and life's most important. So with that, we'll get things rocking and rolling, and we'll start with Elizabeth Doss. Elizabeth, who will be taking over on Friday. Programming note, we'll be talking about businesses and business with GIFs, and she'll get everything involved there, so we're excited for that conversation on Friday. But Elizabeth, introduce yourself, where you are, what you believe in, and go from there. Let's talk some production.
Yeah, sure. Hi, my name is Elizabeth Doss. I am a motion graphic designer and social media consultant, but I specialize in engagement across social platforms in the realm of animated GIFs and how brands and businesses are using those in GIF stickers, as well as in DMs, comments, etc. Because Giphy is serving up they're serving up 1 billion users daily, 10 plus billion GIFs daily. And so a lot of businesses are leveraging that area of the social media world to have content for their communities to interact with, and also for them to be able to react with to their to the world at large. Yes, and so just to be clear, we're going to go ahead and have our conversation, and then we'll pass on to the next one. I'm a little bit frazzled today, so but we're talking about producing, and I will say, so for the last couple of years, I've been co-hosting a show on every Tuesdays at 10 a.m. with a good friend of mine, Stephanie Gillis-Paulgard. We also met on Clubhouse, as many of us that are on this side have done, and we have this show that's especially for people that are DIYing their social media and just need a little bit of encouragement, some practical tips, that kind of stuff. So we've been doing that for several years now, but we finally have started to take ourselves seriously. And I was hearing it in some of the things that you guys were talking about in the producing of a show and all the things that go into it. Because I get where the hosts that can afford it would like to just show up and do the thing, but if you're DIYing it, you are all the people and all the positions and trying to figure all that out. I will say, we've been using Riverside FM here on the digital hospitality side of things, and Stephanie and I have just finished our first episode using it, and we are loving how the platform supports the social media part of the podcast with being able to take clips from your shows and then repurposing them. And that would probably be my greatest tip when you're producing content like this, is not to just put it out in one form. How can you multiply it? So for instance, this show is a long form piece of content. It's being live streamed, so it has a place, its own little place, but then you could share it as a podcast where it's audio only, which is what Cali Barbecue Media does. They repurpose it for audio only, also have it on YouTube, etc. But then you could take these little clips and then add the link to the full episode in the clip caption, and it points back to this bigger conversation. Now, you could take the transcript from this and do what we are planning on doing, is to throw it into ChatGPT and saying, hey, will you take this transcript and summarize it as a blog post or a newsletter for LinkedIn, et cetera. And then we can also have the audio. By the way, you can embed audio and video in your newsletters. So it actually has a playhead within the LinkedIn newsletters. And then LinkedIn does all the pushing out to the people when they subscribe to your channel and to your stuff. So it's really interesting. And then you could take that blog post and turn it into a graphic or a carousel that points back to the newsletter, that points back to the video content. And so taking one piece of content like this and dicing it up and repurposing it, it's like what you do with your turkey leftovers. You eat it in one way, and then you have sandwiches and casseroles and other things that you try to use the whole thing, but in different forms. And I do think it's fascinating to do that. We had a conversation in December here, and I remember talking. Well, Richard was talking, but I was discussing the fact that I love when we can capture him in the wild, and that's what I feel like these recorded sessions with podcasts and other things is. You get people's real stories, real reactions, and they lower that guard of what Richard has called sales breath. Where you actually get past the pitch and you start to get to know the people and the stories behind what's going on. So anyway, I'm absolutely fascinated, and I'm deep in the world of taking and producing this. But one thing I have noticed is a little bit of preparation can go a long way. Like I've gotten used to just showing up on here and just pulling it out of the hat, like just whatever. But if you can prepare just a little bit, it'll make those sound bites all the juicier to be able to speak concisely, clearly, etc. As what I have not done today. And so I'm going to pass it back to you, Michael.
That was great. I think
my
go ahead. I didn't know if you were
no, go for it. I think I just froze for a split second, but if you put in development and pre-production, and I'll throw it to you, Gavin, as my internet's not being nice. Like the behind the scenes work is what makes what happens, and I think that goes for a lot of things. The pre-production and the development of your ideas is crucial in everything that you want to do in the moment as the sun is fading and I am disappearing. So go for it, Gavin.
No, I mean, with what Elizabeth said about, production, and you want to prepare for your final product. And that's so huge. I mean, in radio, we used to have a rule of an hour of production for every hour you'd be on the air, which can be a lot of work. But the point is that, as Mike was saying, you don't want to notice production issues. You don't want to notice that the host is dropping out or having a lot of times we would have hosts that are on different connections. They're not even in the room with us. They're on like an ISDN line. They're in a different state. You don't want the listener to even know that. You want to be able to make them, think everyone's together in the same room. But that is, again, the value of a producer, and a good producer is, like Mike said, you don't even want to notice them, or maybe the really in tune listener will notice that there's good production. And if it's a podcast or something, there's a little compression on that or some things like that. So there's a lot that goes into this, but as you said, Elizabeth, in your work, I mean, you don't just create a GIF out of nowhere. You have to start creatively, and then you're technically making it. So I'm excited to hear from everyone else. How about I'll do one? I'll bring my first person. We'll bring up Matt Wampler to the stage and tell us who you are and what you believe. How's that?
Yeah, Matt Wampler, CEO over at ClearCogs. We're working with restaurants to provide predictive forecasting, so they know how much food to have prepped, what to order, and who to staff. Spend about a decade in the industry. I'm getting a kick out of Steven's background. Steven, literally, that could have been my office in the back of the store for a long time. So take me back down memory lane. But excited to be here. Excited to hear about producing.
Awesome, Mike. How's your lighting now?
I think the light moved a little bit. My internet's not being nice, the light's not being nice, but you got to kind of roll with the punches. And Matt, while we have you here, because we kind of have the before we kind of rotate around, why don't you give some stories, your feelings on your viewpoint of production, and from
Matt's
from your
been
heart,
on a lot of podcasts. He was on my guy Greg Majewski's podcast just a minute ago. I work with Greg on Room for Seconds, and he was a recent guest.
Yeah, you know what? I do the podcast circle. I enjoy talking. So I actually had this conversation with another friend of this show, Jason Berkowitz. One of the things I struggle with is, how do you be genuine and have a real conversation? and not have canned answers, right? So how much prep work do you want to have versus be in the moment and have a conversation? And I think the best advice I've gotten on this was from Jason. And it was, you just need to trust yourself to hit your marks, know your content, know what it is conceptually you want to say, and then don't be super contrived. Instead, just, trust your instincts and that you're going to hit your landing and be in the moment. And for whatever reason, that's always really clicked with me.
Yeah, and one other area that I've heard similar to that from a lot of talent over the years is like, not listening. If you're hosting a podcast, you don't want to listen necessarily to a ton of other podcasts that are in the same area as you, because you don't want to pick up anything. You don't want to copy anyone, And as Matt was saying, like, being authentic is just, it's what everyone is seeking. It is why podcasts are successful. There's like an intimacy that the listener and the host develop without either one even knowing, but you are able to reach people in a different way. And so the authenticity, like Matt was saying, and Jason's advice, like, be yourself. Don't worry about being so prepared and overly prepared on the topic, even though, unless you're in like a debate situation, which I recently saw, like an interview debate. It was like a religious debate, and the one of the people had not prepared enough and ended up looking terribly. So
Well,
in that situation, you want to be prepared.
listening goes both ways. I mean, I can say as a guest on many podcasts that when the host is not listening to your responses, it creates a weird dynamic, because half the time you want to half answer a question that naturally leads into the next topic. And, if you're not having a conversation and instead just reading off a list of questions and checking the box that I got those questions asked, you're not going to produce good content.
Yeah, I mean, you have
Right.
to listen to what the interviewee is saying. I completely agree. I worked with Dan Patrick for years. He's just a legend in the sports radio industry, and he's kind of known as the best interviewer. And that was one of his things, was like, don't think you know what the next question is. Try to pivot off of what they're saying just then. So that's a great tip for anyone hosting.
Yeah, the best. Right, like if I'm talking and you're, Matt, you're interviewing me, and I just snuck in. I was on the moon yesterday, and then you went to the next question. It would be like, wait a minute, you got to obviously embellishing here, but listening to that chunk and knowing what the next question is to get more information out of the person to lead to a better story.
I think the real question we need to have around production is, we've got two producers here. One of them, Mike, you're in witness protection, I assume, hiding the face, and Gavin, you're producing out of the kid's bedroom. Like,
that's right. Yeah.
Did you ever think this would be where you're producing content?
No, I mean, even when I was working in radio, even up till the COVID pandemic, we were still going in. Like, we were, so I was solely an in-studio production person for a long time. And now with the amount, the pandemic really opened up the remote production world. But yeah, this was once my office, I will say. And then my daughter came along and then she got the room. Cool. Well, thank you so much for joining us, Matt. And we're going to keep you all on here. We'll go to Hildy next. Hildy, how are you doing today? Tell us about who you are and what you believe.
Hi, I hope everyone in California fires. I mean, that's all we're hearing in Georgia. So I'm focused on that and hoping that, I don't know, the fires just go into the ocean, just ocean, suck them in and move on. Here in Atlanta, it's in the 20s. We're going to get hit. I bet Elizabeth's going to get hit too. But for the moment, we got sunny, cold weather. Because life isn't hard enough for me right now with my new eyeballs, my washer and dryer broke. So I'm sitting in my girlfriend's house and doing my laundry. That's production in itself. But thank goodness, we all have friends. When things like washers and dryers break, you just figure it out until a new one can be delivered. So I sell swag for a living. And while that may sound cheesy to you, everybody is currently, if you look down at your desk or your space, there is something that someone like me made, whether it's the pen or the mouse pad or the t-shirt or the baseball hat. And it's kind of the wave of the future. We're talking about podcasts being a connection. So is promotional products. It creates emotions. And I have a huge team behind me. Now, look, half the people who do what I do, they want to be the chief cook and bottle washer. They want to be the solopreneur and do everything. And that's not my joy. My joy is creativity and sales. So this past weekend, for the first time in my life, I took a Greyhound bus from Atlanta, Georgia, down to Orlando, where there is a medium-sized trade show. And that's a whole story in itself, which I won't get into. But there was a decent show in Orlando at the convention center there. And there were, I don't know, maybe let's say 1,000 of us and probably 500 vendors. And the goal is to kind of go to the booths and understand what not necessarily is new, because I hate that. What's new? Every year for Christmas, what can you buy that's new? I'm always about what's old school that's been redone in a way that no one's seen, whether it's sustainable or recycled or just something clever about it. So I got some new ideas, but I ran into there's one person now. A company I work for does 80 million a year. I mean, it's an insane amount, but all from Hildies. We have 400 Hildies in my company. So when you have 400 Hildies, you have to have producers. So I ran into Kim Bowden, and her job is to go around and vet vendors to make sure that they're sustainable, make sure that they're taking care of their staff, making sure that they take care of us, and sampling. And like, I want a trip to Aruba this year. So are they going to come to Aruba? And if they are going to come to Aruba and wine and dine me, how much do they pay? So here's one person in my company, and all she does, her job description is vendor relations. So she's working on producing that behind the scenes for me. I don't have the patience or the bandwagon to do that for every single vendor. That's her thing. So while I may not be in production per se, like we're all talking about, I produce based on Kim telling me what vendors we trust, right? So then I'm going to produce picking the candlestick and who's going to decorate the candlestick and showing it to my client, and not showing it. So it's kind of cool the way I look at production, because I went to NYU Film School for production of movies. So I kind of see it differently. And I feel that there's a lot of us out there who don't realize that producing something isn't always the person at the keyboard doing all of the volume control and the lighting. There's other things about it too. So I'm going to throw it back to you. I just wanted to throw a different viewpoint in the whole thing.
Yeah. No, I mean, as you said, like everyone is in production. Everyone, works in their own industry, but in essence, it takes someone to know what needs to get done, who can get it done, and how it's going to get done. And so whatever industry you're in, go ahead, Mike.
I'm glad Hildy said that, because I think it's really important to preface, like, production isn't about, the I'm making this content, but it's whatever you're producing, whatever you're making, however you need to get there from step A, B, C, D, and final to the final place. That's production. We do it in this field of, content creation and podcasts and videos. So it changes on that front, but I think it's a really important conversation to have with how you are moving things personally important. Like, I'm in the middle of producing this, so I'm learning. All right, I'm on my laptop. When I'm in this side of the office, internet doesn't work as great. I've got a camera on, I've got tabs open. So I'm trying to learn and produce Riverside at the same time. But all right, if I remove my camera, if I then unplug the cords and move to the other side of the room, will this create the better content? And
It turns out it didn't.
I save notes. Does this work? No, it didn't. And we keep learning.
You
but
froze
that's kind
for
of
a
it. So
second.
Gavin, I'll let you play point guard and move it along to people, just because if I'm freezing around. But I always say, like, hey, Riverside, mid live stream, producing in the moment. So I'll throw it back to you, Gavin.
I feel honored that I seem to have the better Wi-Fi right now, because I'm usually the one with the worst Wi-Fi. And by the way, Hildy, thank you for shouting out California. I live in Orange. Yeah. I live in Orange County, and luckily we haven't been touched by the fires yet. They're, about 20 miles north of us in LA. But I have a lot of friends up there, and I'm thinking about them, and it is hopefully they're starting to get it under control. But it is wild out there. Yeah. Ian, thank you for joining us today. We'll bring you in. Tell us a little bit about yourself, and anything you would like to say about production or what you believe in your industry.
Yeah, thanks, Gavin. Thanks for having me. My name's Ian. I'm with EHS Recruiting Company. We have a network of recruiting offices focused on primarily the hospitality and restaurant industry nationwide. I'm a partner in the Los Angeles and Southern California office. So, trying to connect restaurant leaders to the companies that need their talents. So we're out networking, meeting people every day. This conversation's awesome. It's super relevant for what I do in our office because I'm kind of in charge of our social media and content creation. I've made a couple GIFs, not nearly as good as what Elizabeth does, but just animating our logo, trying to get our brand out there and learning how to interact with our audience. And when I'm creating content, I'm a relative newbie and self-taught at it all, but it's an evolution of trying to figure out what you're trying to convey to your audience and what they want to hear actually. So trying to pick up on how to engage with your audience and not selling constantly. No one wants to be sold to 24/7, so you can't put out a pitch on every single post you make, every video. You can't try to overcome objections in advance. You have to speak to their needs. So I'm learning, how to engage with both potential clients and our candidate base, to convey those messages, and really just get out there. And our office is trying to embrace new media and be a part of the conversation across different platforms. So we're really enjoying networking with everyone in the community and really do have that rising tides mentality ourselves. One of my favorite quotes is, "We all do better when we all do better." So that's kind of our attitude and figuring it out how we can connect talent with the right companies. And then also, we want to be a hub for networking. And, if we have a client that we find out has a need, we want to know somebody to help them with that issue. So glad to be part of this community and appreciate meeting everybody.
Awesome. Well, hopefully, this network as well can help you with that. I think the recruiting industry and LinkedIn are like so important right now, and I think I know from using LinkedIn a lot. I see a lot of great recruiters putting out content, and some of the most valuable things I think they're saying is what what interviewers, what jobs, what hiring managers want to hear in interviews, what they're looking for. I think there's a massive marketplace for that right now. So that's exciting to hear that you guys are kind of diving into content creation. I think there's so much value in what you're seeing in your experience and what you're finding out about how anything has changed, resume length, anything like that. That's all super valuable, and LinkedIn is a perfect platform for that. Awesome. Mike, did you have anything? How's your internet doing? Any better?
No, I think it's doing a little bit better. It just seems like every 15 or 20 seconds ago, it does kind of fade to hear me do it there live. But Ian, it's cool to hear you say that and to create all the content and to give your backstory in that is awesome to hear. So I appreciate hearing that, and keep sharing. I think Matt, you said this before about being on like a lot of different podcasts too. I always find it really interesting. I think it's really important for producers in particular I think it's really important to get your voice out the things that happen behind the scenes because there's so much that happens. I think sometimes it's forgotten. And even in your own daily lives, like the work you're doing, like document it and say it because it takes so many steps to get to places and you forget when you're doing this production, like write it down. I think that's really important. We'll hand it off to Tom Spry. If you can hear me, I don't even know if you can, but I'll let it.
Hi there. Can you hear me now?
Oh,
all right, good. So I've been recruiting for, no, I guess I'm the boomer in the room, so I can hold that title with pride. Have been very involved in promoting and connecting people in the restaurant and hospitality and the related tech space for almost 30 years now. I am tapping into my inner millennial. Was introduced to Sean 2.5 years ago, and he sat there saying, organic content on your phone, post it, be brave. And I have start and stopped and start and stopped several times in these 2.5 years, and have decided that 2025, that I'm going to reach the challenge. My daughter is a content creator focusing on IG Reels in the hospitality space, and she is amazing. And I have to be the tree to that apple and do my own. So thank you for allowing me to be here today.
That
And
is
yes,
awesome to hear.
By the way, Miss Doss, you and I have already connected in the past. I have your proposal. I intend to pull the trigger as well here in January.
That is awesome, Tom. That's so great to hear. I mean, that's the biggest thing about this whole production world we're in and we're talking about right now is it's for everybody. It is not something that you just need to leave behind because it's a new thing. You know, there are so many people out there that have a message that need to be delivered, and the way technology is nowadays, it's easier than ever to get started. And so I definitely advise everyone to do what Tom is doing and dip your foot in that water. And there's a lot of space out there. Richard Liverman, welcome to Rising Tides. How are you doing today? How is bloody England?
Bloody freezing. Good evening.
That's different than here, but yeah.
Yeah, I just don't do the cold. Just horrible. But really enjoyed listening to you guys. It's really interesting in the sense of I'm producing more and more content, and there's always a little bit where how can you make it easier to consume for people? Elizabeth's been nagging me on content for a long time. Hopefully it's getting better. I'll let her tell me. I'll take a double thumbs up. But one of the questions I had for you guys is, as somebody that has appeared on podcasts, potentially thinking about that for later on in the year, I'm doing my first webinar in a couple of weeks' time, which I'm really excited about. Slightly nervous, not in terms of the content, but in terms of the production. And I guess it's kind of, how can I make it clean and crisp for people that are listening in? So it's a question to you guys, like, what advice would you give somebody? I've got a couple of guests who are, pretty good. It's an interesting topic. There should be lots of people there. How can I make it as clean and crisp for the audience as possible? I welcome your suggestions. Thank you.
Mike, did you want to start or
I'll let you start, Gavin, just because I'm worried about my internet going in and out. But,
okay.
I'll let you kick it off. But I did hear the question, Richard. I definitely did.
Yeah, when it comes to a webinar and if you're streaming it, there's a lot of different platforms out there. There's obviously Riverside we're on right now. I think another industry leader in there is StreamYard, and that's a very popular tool right now. So I would do some investigating on that. And I'm obviously, me, Mike, Sean, we're all here to help as you look into that. But yeah, I think webinars, I think the main advice I would give for webinars is your message. What do you say every week? You say, don't be boring. That is the problem with webinars. You do not, they are structured like you're back in a college lecture. And so the more ways that you can make that more inviting, whether it's graphic overlays, different questions popping up. And I'm, again, StreamYard, Riverside, there are ways to make that happen, and it'll just take some walkthrough on how do you make that happen. But yeah, I mean, as long as you can devise what you want to say, organize like a rundown of the topics you're going to discuss, go into that preparation. I'm sure you're already on that. But yeah, I think, and I'll let Mike jump in. He's kind of our Riverside guru here, to share any advice.
Yeah, and I would piggyback on that, and thank you, Gavin. Is also with this, it sounds kind of simple, but just the practice of things, like go through the questions, practice saying them out loud, pretend to do it a few times. Sean's talked about this before, and I think it's really important. He's talked about like comedians have done their sets hundreds and hundreds of times. So when they're saying their comedy routine, they have said these things so many times that it's just second nature to them. Just like anything you do, the more you practice, the easier it gets. And then kind of connecting the dots to what Matt had said earlier, like and you weren't here for this, Richard, or if you're watching it, but what's that level that makes you feel the most comfortable? So if it's over preparing with the questions and being beyond ready word for word, or it's bullet points that you have that you feel most comfortable with, like whatever that is, with repetition, to me is the way to go. And just remember too, like, you're going to get better. The more and more you do anything, it's going to get better. And just give yourself some grace on the first time. And the more and more you do these things, like to me, like you just continue to develop and get better and be better the next day. And by the time, now you've done them 4 or 5 times and you're like, man, I got this, right? Like, I think all of that just really connects the dots, and knowing you, it's going to be awesome.
And we've got the man who gave me that advice on the call, Jason Berkowitz.
That's right.
Let's bring Jason in now, because I know he also is heavily dove into the studio production and
I did that by accident, trying to be a good producer. I was like, oh, Jason's here, I'm going to bring up Matt's story, knowing that he's going to connect the dots and then throw it to Jason, just thinking 3 steps
Beautiful.
ahead. So thank you.
Masterful.
Appreciate it. Jason Berkowitz, longtime restaurant operator and partner, founder, Arrow Up Training. We do a bunch of fun training stuff for restaurants. We'll move on from there. But what's been fun is watching this on YouTube, and sort of hearing everybody. Matt, apologies. I'm excited to listen back to yours. And I heard you talking about LA. I'm actually in the heart of it. We're safe, but we are surrounded by ominous smoke and all. So I've been taking phone calls while this has been going on from parents and friends and everybody. So it's an interesting thing. The point that I'm saying is, it's been interesting to switch over from Clubhouse to LinkedIn, moving from audio to video production. I was kicking and screaming a little bit quietly in the background, but making sure I'm sending the messages to Sean privately, being like, I don't know, man, I hope you prove me wrong, right? And so being somewhat of a positive person. And here it was. What was great was being able to be on YouTube, listen, watch, stream, answer people's texts, take calls, do a couple things, miss only a bit of it, but really participate. So this is now a question for all of you. You're absolutely right. I'm no stranger to production. We are moving to actually build a place that we can do more production in, which is fun, and I'm excited. And we found a spot in LA we're going to move to in a couple weeks. And as I start to launch a lot more content, and that's the theme of 2025, which is content, more and more content over and over again. One of the pieces that we're launching now is, and I thank you for someone that has joined, which is our accountability club, which we are going to be doing a weekly call in, which we've started, and there's pretty good signups so far. And I thank you, Matt Wampler, who was my accountability buddy, to make sure we started the accountability club. I wanted to do a low lift call in because this is ranging from teenagers to my plus 80-year-old parents who want to participate. So I looked, right? We're not going Clubhouse. LinkedIn shut it down. I tried to do Zoom as a test, because test everything, just like you guys did before. But everyone has to download Zoom and the workspace to be able to do it. I tried Google G Chat and Meet, but then it pops up I know Matt likes that one, but videos pop up first, and you can't have people muted when they call in to start. So we got everybody's. I foresee the noise. What do I do? Do we do Riverside and we keep it just audio? Do two of us have video, but people can stream it on YouTube? How do we create this thing so that people can engage, but they also don't feel like they have to engage? Because something that was really important, and then I want to turn it over because it's a very specific production question. Matt Wampler really helped me out when I was launching this thing. And this was going to be about scorecards and measuring and goals and mile markers. And we got this. And he was like, whoa, slow that shit down, Charlie. Let everyone go at their own pace. This is something of like, do you need an accountability buddy? Let this be light. So how do we use technology today that an 80+ person can participate quietly in the background or not, but keep the train moving? What are your recommendations, my awesome producers?
That is a really good point and a really good question, Jason, because I've worked, as you can see, like I know Riverside pretty well. My internet isn't cooperating today, right? Like there's some things that are out of your control that can cause chaos. And I do think the most, like to your point with technology and moving, it's a difficult task, right? Some things that I have done that have helped are have an accountability buddy in a sense for somebody that is not as technologically inclined, right? Maybe there's a friend, a relative, a coworker, somebody that knows the connection, Riverside knows it a little better, and have them be there, essentially be their producer next to them. Now I understand that might not be a possibility. But my first avenue would be like, hey, if this person can connect with somebody that can help them out at all times and be there, you just have to set them up, get them on there, and then kind of be in the background. Maybe they can do some other work. That would be like my big takeaway. And the other one is practice sessions of doing things beforehand. Like, don't let the first time you go on there be the first time that they try this. Like, have some room for error, practice, set up some time on a calendar where you can go in and mess around with this and see if they can understand it a little bit better, and see if they can get a little more comfortable. So it would be the reps ahead of time. And if there's somebody that could essentially be like their producer with them, I think could go a really long way if it's possible.
I like the idea of, I appreciate this. I like the idea of a tech buddy to help them out. One of the things though, as far as the pre-gaming is, people will continue to join if all works well each week without any sort of practice, right? We'll be running. So do you like Riverside to be this foundation? I mean, back in my day, we used to have a party line when I was 12 years old and everybody dialed in. And I almost want that.
Really quick, are you wanting to do video with this? Is that
doesn't need to be no.
So I actually help produce it's actually a prayer call every Saturday morning at 10 a.m. with people from all over the country. There's usually about 100 people that are on there. And we use a website called freeconferencecall.com. And it's a way for you to have a conference call where I monitor in case anybody's unmuted. And you know how that goes. But anyway, it's just a way for you to be able to have and it's just a phone number that people call into, and we just give a little bit of instructions. Please stay muted until you're called on or whatever. But you can see if you can go in and add people's names to their numbers, so you can actually see who's joining the call and all that stuff. So anyway, check it out.
That's awesome. And I've Googled everything but conference call. I've done Meetup, this, that. Matt Wampler, are you comfortable? What do you think? Start off video, or are you thinking this is audio to start?
I'm already looking up the Google Meets to show you how to get the settings in place so that everyone's automatically muted. I'm firmly on the Google Meet side still.
Okay. This is
Google Meet's pretty good. Yeah.
The real question is how you're going to hold all these people accountable to show up.
It's up to them. If you're there, they're there. If you're there, I'm there. It's like in restaurants. You focus on one, that one focuses on one. What are you saying, Elizabeth?
I will say we do sign up for an SMS text. It goes out an hour before the call, and it just has the number in it, and it just reminds people, hey, if you want to join, it's we're about to do this anyway. So that's one way that we do it, and I think they use a program called Flocknote for a mass SMS text thing, but you can also, and people can sign up for it, and they can type stop anytime they don't want to receive it anymore.
And one other question: can you record those calls or no?
Yes,
Can you upgrade and pay to record them?
Yes, there's. I don't know if you have to pay for it, but there's a way to record the call. It just note, because I did it. Oh my god, I did it last Saturday because my friend was like, "Hey, is this call recorded?" And I was producing, and I hit it, and in the middle of someone's prayer, it's like, "This call is being recorded," and I was like, "Oh no, what did I do?" Anyway, so just note, if you're going to do it, hit the record button ahead of time. But also, depending on what states people are calling in from, you need to let them know you are being recorded at some point during the
Totally.
call. So anyway.
Totally. All right. This has been fun. Thanks for letting me pick your brains.
Jason, something that Mike said about you're talking about doing this accountability, and you're talking about learning the technology, et cetera, et cetera. I think one of the things that's really helped me, there's a term in autism called body doubling, and I'll put the link to it in the chat. And the idea is that having somebody else in the room makes it easier for you to do something. It actually holds you accountable. And I think there's that little bit where everybody's talking about practice and building it up. One of the things that, I don't get nervous when it comes to talking, but I get nervous when it comes to using technology. So when I'm doing the webinar, I've got somebody with me to do the body doubling. So to take away that pressure, so I can focus on the audience. And what I'll do is I'll send you just a little thing about it, but just think about how you can almost have your own accountability partner or body double just to help you get through the first ones. And it's a technique that works brilliantly. You don't just have to do it with production. You can do it with work, but it's building on something that Mike said that I thought might be useful for you.
I think that's great. Thank you. I guess one more quick thing, and then only because we're a smaller group and then turning it back, is what I'd like learning about Riverside for other production and content that we're doing and podcasting is streaming it directly to you immediately. And that minimizes this idea of the produce or publish. Because if you publish that live at the same time, you've removed a barrier towards getting it out there. Because I do have a lot of great interviews sitting on the cutting room floor, or potentially great, who knows? Because no one's going to hear them again. So in some of this other stuff that we're doing, my buddy and I are interviewing a bunch of general managers along the way, just having real conversations, literally like post-shift drink conversations. I like this idea of a live stream because that's it. It's there. Let it go. Done is better than perfect. So that's something that I wanted to plant that seed separately into this feed.
Yeah, I think looking at how you want to do things, and I think, Jason, what makes all of this great is there's no right or wrong answers. It's whatever you want and you believe in and how you want to foresee it to go moving forward, I think is awesome. So for you, if you're like, all right, I want to cut down on some of my post-production, how can I do that? A technique is, all right, I'm going to go with the live stream. It's going to record it. Riverside's cool because you can actually do a normalized feature. So if you did need to repurpose it, you can take the audio. I'm a firm believer in whatever you need to do for your particular production, use your rules. And if that means going on Riverside because you don't want to do some of that post, then do that. Now, there's some products where, like if you're doing, like I'll use an extreme example, but like a movie, you can't just, hit record and hit stop and go to the movie theater. It won't work, right? So whatever works best for you in that case. And I think that's awesome if you've already established that and, use it, see it, and learn from it. And maybe in 2-3 months you want to change it, right? And there's no rules. And that's what I think also is super cool about all this technology as a modern day producer.
I have a question for Richard. Body doubling is, I remember about 2 years ago, a year ago, there were crowdsourced free accountability sprint type of applications going around, or subscriptions. And body doubling sounds something that might have been an offshoot of something like that, where you can participate with other people, throw out what you're accountable for, have a timeline that you want to operate, typically 1 hour sprint, for example, on a subject. Others would join in and you would be holding each other accountable during that process. Is that similar to what we're talking about here?
Yeah. Absolutely. And it's one of those things, like I said, it comes out of ADHD and autism. But because it's so effective, people have used it. So there's accountability sessions and body doubling that are through apps, or you can literally just have somebody with you. It depends on what works for you. But the actual idea of it is an ADHD term that has just become into the mainstream. And what you described is almost the benefit of it. It's having somebody with you that helps increase the focus and the motivation. Now, often for an ADHD person, it might be something that is trivial or potentially boring, or it might be something from a more complex view, where if you're talking about technology, which might be complicated to somebody, having somebody that understands the tech, like a tech buddy, which is what Mike was saying, having that person with you with that expertise is really reassuring. So I remember pre-Zoom doing a WebEx and having a WebEx expert in the room, because we were doing a call from the middle of England to Portland. We'd on a call on a WebEx. We'd not used it before. That's what our client was using. And there's people now that are professional Zoom drivers. So if you're running a Zoom, you can hire somebody to run a Zoom for you. That's a different way of body doubling, but from a technical perspective. But as a concept, I think it's really, really helpful. I think it builds on what Jason and Matt are talking about, but it also builds on what Mike was talking about technically. I hope that helps.
And-
One more question, Mike. For accountability purposes, we're throwing Stover in as a wrench attack resource for someone who's not doing what they're supposed to be doing, correct?
Yeah,
I just wanted to show you guys that I'm stuck on the side of the road and I can't get my car fixed.
You're so
Is this-
hardcore.
So that everything's. I mean, this is producing to the extreme. Hopefully, everything is okay. Most importantly, working on your car. Produce it. The result there is most important. But Stover, it's good to see you. That has to. I mean, you guys can tell me too as well. That has to be a first for a Rising Tides having a tire being fixed.
I once worked with a radio host who, in the middle of a segment, his Tesla was.
This is.
Yeah.
Howard Stern.
We'll keep the name off the air.
No problem.
But you always have to be ready to pivot, and sometimes you take over a show because your host is having to run out of the studio.
Yeah, it's fun. It's funny you say that, because we had, and Gavin and I both worked in sports radio for almost a decade, so I'm sure we could share stories. But I'll never forget having to play back an interview and recutting, editing audio to pretend like somebody was there when it wasn't them, and then looping music for times throughout it. So yeah, you do what you got to do.
Yeah, but that's kind of the fascinating thing, and everyone here can relate to how your industry has changed over time.
Mhm.
And being there on time was the most important thing as a producer. Like that, the show can't air if you're not there to get everything going. And in podcasting, it still takes me a while to realize that not everyone in the digital media, and I'm not talking about Cali BBQ, but I'm saying like not everyone has to hold themselves to that standard in a world where everything is going out after the fact. It's not live. It's not, Riverside today was a good example of my radio days of, hey, we're going live at 10 a.m. Pacific. We need to be there. But I think there are good things to hold on to, even if it's an older way of doing things. I don't think you have to completely throw everything out. A lot of those lessons you learned early on in your industry, I don't think you have to get rid of those. Cool. I think we are ready for the portion of the podcast where we give a tip and a takeaway. Mike, do you want to kick that off for us?
Yeah, I would, and I appreciate everybody as I've kind of gone dark here. And I believe it actually has helped the internet. So kind of as we learn Riverside in real time, anybody's using it. If you're struggling with your internet connection, obviously you want your video there, but at least just having something is better than nothing within your production landscape yourself. Don't take it for granted. Understand all the small steps to get to where you need to go. And remember that we're all kind of producers, even if we don't realize it or not. Whatever we're making, we are producing. And don't take for granted all those steps. Learn from them. Write down the ones that work. Write down the ones that do not work, and keep growing. So I really believe in that. It was I'm really excited that we got to do this today because producers make the world go round, and it's really important. So Gavin, I'll toss it your way, and then we can tip takeaway homework for the rest of the group.
Yeah, I think throughout my career, the biggest thing I've always held myself to is always being willing to learn, being a sponge around the talented people I work with, and staying up to date, and even trying to forecast what's ahead. And I think you can apply that to whatever industry you're in. Technology is going to change everything, but the more that you can adapt to that, stay aware of what's happening in your industry, and just keep learning, never stop learning, and utilize the resources around you. It doesn't have to be a boss that's giving you the best advice. I think you have to be a sponge in your industry, and I've used that throughout my career, and I never want to stop learning. If I had just wanted to stay in radio and never adapt to a digital media world or broadcast world, I wouldn't be able to move forward. And so that's kind of my advice and my tip. What order did we started with Elizabeth?
Yeah.
So we will go to her next.
Awesome. Now, your story of taking over the podcast reminded me. I did a lot of musical theater in high school, right out of college times, and I actually shifted into assistant directing. And we had been working for months for this. We had 2 weekends full of shows, and one of the actresses had a panic attack in the matinee and could not do the evening show. And I was the only one that do it, but I'd been showing up and I'd been doing it, and so there I was. And it was a children's theater, so I mean we had a sold out house of like 200 people, but the kids were having to help me remember my lines and my blocking because I'd never done it before. It was a hot mess, but we got through it. And so you were reminding me of times when you had to step in that you didn't know that you were going to have to do that. I wanted to just talk to Tom for 2 seconds and just say I'm super excited about you creating content. And Tom, if I could give you one piece of advice, it would be don't think about the entire world that you're trying to talk to. If you can show up for one person on the other side of that camera that needs to hear what you have to say and to share that, it'll take the pressure off of you. And to know that, and for me, I try to speak to the person that maybe a couple steps behind me that needs that little bit of help. And so anyway, so get rid of I'm talking to the entire world. No, just talk to one person and give them the advice that you wish that somebody would have helped you out with. And we can't wait to see the content that you're going to crank out in 2025. My last thing I wanted to share, I was listening to the podcast because I'm going to be on Scott Turner's podcast tomorrow. We're recording tomorrow. And so I asked him, this is a good tip, ask them, can you send me a recording of one of your podcasts that has the energy and the vibe that you really enjoyed the most? And so he sent me an episode to listen to. Of course, it was him and Sean, and he sent me a couple others. But in that episode, guys, they've talked about when you have a guest on, or when you're going to be doing something like this, to go over to ChatGPT and ask it and say, can you tell me 5 interesting or things about so-and-so's beliefs and about them and their beliefs. And oh my gosh, like I put my own name in and I was like, I mean, obviously it's crawling the internet, but it's summarizing it so beautifully. So instead of Googling, this is the new Google yourself. Go and ask ChatGPT to tell me 5 interesting things about Arrow Up training. It's about it and its beliefs, and watch this little summary pop up. I'm like, I'm going to change my About Me page on my website. So I wanted to throw that out there to go and check that out for you and your friends. Anyway, back to you, Gavin.
Gavin, and do you know that I constantly lied to the internet every time I would set up a social profile from the beginning of the internet. I hated spam before it was even called that. I hated junk. And you would get stuff in the mail. And so I would deliberately misspell everything. I would say I was a woman. I would say it had different ages, different birthdays, different beliefs. But now I got no trail. I have a really weird
I think like in the last like 7, 8 years, because of Sean and all the work we've done with all this stuff, I actually have a little bit, but it's barely anything because of that insincerity that I brought to the early internet, because the internet wasn't seen as a real thing back then. When I was growing up, it was seen as fake. And so you went on there and you effed around, you know? And I think it will come back to bite me if I ever leave this sort of community and profession, because I'm not going to be able to get any professional job, because they're going to be like, how old are you? Who are you? Like, where do you come from? Why have you lied your entire life online?
Yeah,
So, I think I'm enigmatic.
ChatGPT is telling me you can change a tire, and I happen to know that's not accurate.
ChatGPT thinks I'm the host of the Barbecue Central show, because one time I joked about being the host or something, and like, you can't joke anymore because the robots will take you literally.
Here's
Anyway, I
even
wanted to
one
share
on
that.
And they're
top is if you
listening right
want,
now.
what I did is, Elizabeth, was when Google Notebook LM came out, I dropped our website in and it created a podcast of two people talking about exactly what the company does and all of this type of stuff. And I haven't done it for a little bit, and it's nuts. Literally, they'll scrape your site and they'll tell stories and going back and forth. I'm like, wow, great. It's cool.
Yeah, and when my Spotify Wrapped came out and it created its own podcast through Notebook LM about what I was listening to, I was like, what is going on here? So awesome. Let's go back to Matt. Give us a tip and takeaway.
Well, Elizabeth's is my takeaway for sure. I think
Pretty
that's
good.
an incredible
Pretty hard to beat.
idea. If I'm next time I'm on a podcast, I'm definitely asking for the episode, because we all wonder it, and yeah, that goes a long way. But the other one I've got is this: producing good content, starts with having crisp messaging, and all of that comes down to practice and repetition. So, continuing to do it so that, when you do inevitably get the wrenches thrown in and things are off the rails, like, what you're talking about well enough that you can do it in your sleep.
Yeah,
Exactly.
Expertise is everything. Prepare and just keep on learning. All right, we will go to Hildy. Give us a tip and takeaway.
Okay, let's see. Tip takeaway. So for me, if anyone has a wild hair and you happen to be in California, assuming the flights don't get canceled on Saturday, I will be in Las Vegas for a week. It's not the Consumer Electronics Show, which everybody thinks it is. No, immediately after that is my show. There are going to be 24,000 of us in Vegas. And we all sell swag for a living, and we're at the Mandalay Bay Convention Center. If you get to Vegas, I will get you a free pass, and you will walk away with some of the best swag. Bluetooth speakers and power banks and charging cords and t-shirts and hoodies, and it's an all-you-can-eat buffet of swag. So Vegas next week, I will be there all week, and that's my tip. Come on.
Is that this
What is
Sunday?
that convention called, Hildy? What's that called?
It's PPAI, Promotional Products Association International.
Why don't they call themselves the Swag Association and then just figure out an acronym for that? Because wouldn't that be cool, like the swag convention?
Great question. So swag is like dumbing down the industry.
It is, yeah, but that's, we're all dumb.
It doesn't roll off the tongue like PPAI.
PPAI is really good.
PPAI is like our, I don't know, what do you call it? Union, I guess.
Mhm.
So
Yeah, I
nobody
know.
outside of my industry knows what PPAI is, or where I was in Orlando this past weekend. That's their competitors, ASI. You guys don't know about that, but if I tell you to come for free swag, then I got you coming.
So that's what I'm saying.
checking
Swag got
my
my
date book,
attention.
yeah. I'm going
Which
to
I'm
a
not
wedding
supposed
on.
to let you in, but I can
I would
sneak
love
you
to be
in.
there.
Come-
Right
if
now, I'm
not
trying to
this year, next
manage.
year.
Right now, I'm trying to manage. How do I go to a wedding on Saturday, but also watch my favorite team in the NFL playoffs? So that is. I'm
So
not telling
Hildy,
the groom
when did
that.
you say you're going to be there?
It's just not applicable.
It's just not applicable. So I'm flying in on Saturday. I've got a client who lives there, so I'm going to stay with her and her family until the show starts. Show starts on Tuesday. So it's all day Tuesday, all day Wednesday, and up until 3:00 on Thursday. I can sneak anybody in that wants it. And I'm telling you, there was one year Damon Johns was there. Yeah,
From
because
Shark
he
Tank,
had
right?
he had Shark
Yeah.
Tanked some people and brought them to the show. So you never know you're gonna run into there. There are celebrities because it's like after Consumer Electronics, it's the next cool show. But you guys don't know about it because you gotta know me.
I like that we're live streaming on the internet and you're inviting people to sneak in.
Forgot about that. Let's hope they see it after next week.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
I have no
Tom,
problem crashing a party anytime, Hilda. I'm there. I get back from Mexico on Sunday night, so we're good.
Tom, do you have a tip or takeaway from this discussion?
My tip is about the power of LinkedIn and the fact that there's just a lot of BS that people put out on LinkedIn, not about the content, but take a look at your profile. And I think that it's a rather underwhelming experience when you can leverage your content in writing about what you do, who you are, how you represent yourself. As a recruiter for 30 years, LinkedIn as a CRM tool is obviously robust and overused. I'll say that. But I think that a lot of people who are looking to network on the platform are missing out on what we're really looking for. That we are very short-term oriented. We like to read in bullet format. We don't need to worry about your creative writing skills. It's more about delivering your KPIs and communicating that effectively. The video formats, I love it when they talk about newscasters now being podcasters on having 90 seconds to deliver content. I think that's a powerful message for any platform in social.
Awesome. Yeah. And as we, I think a good theme is, when you started off the discussion talking about, going into content creation and taking on that challenge, just to, again, want to advise anyone listening to this on the audio side, on YouTube, anywhere, don't be afraid to try it out and get started. And there are so many resources out there to better your content creation and your production. And please join us on this stage if you are listening to this, and we'd love to get you involved. Mike, as our host, or actually, let's go back to Stover if he's available.
I have a couple of good tips. Yeah. So number one, just because you think you can change a tire doesn't mean you can change a tire. Number two, don't let your AAA lapse at the end of December. And number three, when some crazy guy cuts you off, don't honk at him because he'll try to kill you and you'll have to dodge him in the neighborhood and go out and hide like I had to do just like 30 minutes ago. So if you live in a rough part of town, don't honk at people because they go crazy. So that's those are my road lessons for you. I'll be back to storytelling on Friday.
Wow. Good advice.
Live from the mean streets of Portland, Stover, everybody.
Be safe.
Go ahead, Mike.
We have to hear from Richard and Jason, I believe, right? We've got tip, takeaway, homework assignment. So Richard, we'll throw it your way.
Thank you. Really interesting session. I learned a great deal, and you've made me think about how I make my webinar good. And I think the idea of practicing and sticking to my values, it was just really, really helpful advice, and much, much appreciated. And again, thank you for everybody supporting the posts that I've been putting up on LinkedIn. It means a great deal. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely, Richard. And keep us posted on how, of course, everything goes, and can't wait to hear about it. And finally, Jason, tip, takeaway, homework assignment. Take us home.
Freeconferencecall.com. Like, don't be afraid to kind of go low tech, low lift to get in the game. If you spend all this time trying to figure out this big production thing, it's going to be a year later from an idea you had, or 10. So just get going. So I appreciate that. And then we'll see what Matt comes up with. Also, fun little fact, you just hold down the space bar and then it unmutes for you until you release. So I am talking to you and I'm about to release. Thank you for today, everybody.
Excellent release, Jason. Excellent release.
Just a quick question. Is it true that Sean Wolchef is producing this behind the scenes, or is that fake news?
Oh no, we made him produce. Yeah, he's doing all of our work for today. From the mountain, from Big Bear.
That's why my
Sean
internet
would
was going
refuse.
out.
We brought it up as a joke, and he wouldn't even joke around about it. He's like, no.
No, not even happening. Well, yeah, thank you everybody. It's been really fun. It's been cool to be the producers and kind of go back up onto the stage and tell some of our stories and hear from all of you has been tremendous. Of course, we have our show on Friday. Check us out. And Elizabeth Doss will be our special guest. Sean will be back on Friday. And Elizabeth will be talking about the business of GIFs, and really excited to hear from her. And Elizabeth, we want just a minute or two now, kind of tease the episode on Friday. But excited to have you center stage with Sean.
Yeah, sure. I do. Part of the tease is I want you to bring your phones with you because we're going to be playing a little bit. In that we probably should warn the Instagram group what's about to happen. We're gonna have a lot of fun talking about strategies and the practical stuff, and even how the brands I'm working with are leveraging this to build community, which is the next thing that people should be doing rather than the influencer side of things. It's building community. And so we're going to talk a little bit about how these fun animations do that. So yeah.
Perfect. All right.
Awesome.
Friday, 10 a.m. Oh, Jason, go for it. Oh, I thought you
No,
had
I
to
was,
hand
I was waving goodbye. I
Oh,
gotta
I
jump.
thought, we
I'm
were doing
getting
the
hit, so
goodbye. I was like,
waving.
one more thing. Let's do it. No,
Sorry,
but
sorry.
Stover, Tom, Richard, Jason, Hildy, Elizabeth, Gavin, awesome stuff. Great community conversation. Live streaming here, Rising Tides. And we'll see you all on Friday. Take care, everybody. And Stover, be safe.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. All right.
This is that.